To walk the corridors of power in Westminster is to step onto a stage set for perpetual high drama, where triumph and tragedy are separated by the thinnest of margins. The story of Britain's prime ministers is not merely a political chronology but a deeply human saga of ambition, conviction, and often spectacular downfall. These individuals, wielding immense but fragile authority, have shaped the nation's destiny, their personal strengths and flaws magnified under an unforgiving public gaze. Understanding their journeys, their cunning strategies, their communication genius, their fatal blind spots, offers a key to deciphering modern Britain, from its economic transformations and social shifts to its enduring and divisive arguments over Europe. The Premiership demands a rare and paradoxical blend of qualities that transcend raw intellect or ideological purity. It requires a sixth sense for the public mood and an almost supernatural resilience. Foremost among these tangible skills is the power of communication. A leader must translate complex, often painful, policies into a compelling national narrative. Margaret Thatcher mastered this art, framing radical free market reforms not as cold economics but as an expansion of freedom and choice. Equally critical is the agility to navigate and subvert the relentless media narrative. Tony Blair exemplified this, facing hostile press over policies like NHS reforms with a disarmingly fluent and confident presence at regular press conferences, often emerging with the story reframed to his advantage. Furthermore, a prime minister must be a master of internal diplomacy, uniting fractious parties behind a common cause. This demands the subtle art of balancing competing factions, as James Callaghan did by appointing influential figures from both the pro-European and Eurosceptic wings of the Labour Party to his cabinet after the 1975 referendum. The absence of any one of these attributes can prove fatal. Gordon Brown, a figure of formidable intellect, lacked the presentational nimbleness of his predecessor and struggled to connect his grand ideas with the public in a relatable way, contributing to his rapid decline. The portraits of prime ministers that solidify in the public imagination are often crude caricatures, painted with broad strokes by a merciless media landscape. Harold Wilson was persistently depicted as a drab, uninspiring figure, while John Major was framed as inherently weak and ineffectual. These simplistic labels, once applied, become stubbornly adhesive, obscuring a much more complex reality. Wilson, far from being dull, presided over significant social reforms, including the abolition of the death penalty. Major, with quiet determination, steered the Conservative Party away from the divisive edges of Thatcherism and negotiated the Maastricht Treaty. The distortion is often politically charged, with left-wing leaders facing particularly harsh scrutiny in a media environment with a right-leaning tilt. The experience of attending a Harold Wilson rally reveals the chasm between media myth and political reality. Initially appearing weary and delivering a flat monologue, Wilson seemed to embody his dull public image. Yet, when struck by a protester's egg, he transformed instantly, brushing off the yoke to deliver a captivating, witty, and passionate speech that electrified the crowd, a reminder that the essence of leadership often escapes the confines of a newspaper headline. Harold Wilson's longevity, winning for elections, was no accident but the product of consummate political guile. His management of the deeply divisive 1975 referendum on European membership was a masterpiece of tactical ambiguity. Personally in favour of remaining, he faced a Labour Party split from top to bottom. His solution was to suspend collective responsibility, allowing senior ministers to campaign publicly for either side. This clever manoeuvre prevented a party rupture and insulated the referendum from becoming a vote on his own declining popularity, as he deliberately receded from the campaign. Similarly, during the industrial strife of the 1970s, Wilson navigated the treacherous waters between the government and the powerful trade unions, which formed Labour's core base. Instead of direct confrontation, he devised a convoluted social contract that appeared to grant unions freedom while establishing government-backed pay limits, allowing him to present himself as an ally while ultimately restraining their demands. The political landscape was fundamentally reshaped by the arrival of Margaret Thatcher, a force who overthrew the established order within her own party and the nation's economic consensus. Her rise from Grantham grocer's daughter to party leader marked a revolution against the patrician one-nation conservatism of figures like Edward Heath. She represented a new, ideological right, committed to tax cuts, deregulation, and a robust rejection of state intervention. Upon her victory over Heath for the leadership, his despairing remark, "It has all gone wrong," then signaled the end of an era. As Prime Minister, her agenda was equally transformative. Positioning herself as the antidote to the stagnation and strife of the 1970s, she implemented sweeping reforms that dismantled much of the post-war settlement. Her policies privileged financial services and entrepreneurship, but at a severe cost: the rapid deindustrialization of traditional manufacturing heartlands and a deliberate rolling back of the welfare state. She governed with a conviction that brooked little compromise, creating both fervent admirers and bitter opponents, and setting the terms of political debate for decades to follow. The Conservative prime ministers who followed Thatcher each grappled with her overwhelming legacy in their own way. John Major, her immediate successor, sought to soften the edges of Thatcherism with a more compassionate rhetoric, but his government was consumed and ultimately destroyed by intractable divisions over Europe, a fissure that first cracked open under his watch. David Cameron, perceiving himself as a modernizer, entered office with underprepared confidence. His fateful decision to call a referendum on EU membership to manage party dissent was a catastrophic miscalculation of the public mood, a gamble that cost him his career and redefined the nation's trajectory. Theresa May, tasked with implementing the Brexit verdict, proved tragically inflexible. Unable to build consensus in Parliament or read the shifting electoral sentiment, she retreated into a defensive bunker mentality, her tenure becoming a case study in how a lack of political dexterity can paralyze government. The role of the Prime Minister, as these portraits illustrate, is a perpetual tightrope walk. It demands the vision to set a course, the cunning to survive, the eloquence to persuade, and the humility to listen, a combination few can sustain for long. Their stories are etched with both grandeur and pathos, a reminder that in the heart of Westminster's machinery, it is ultimately human character, in all its brilliance and frailty, that writes history. The ongoing saga of Britain, its internal tensions and its place in the world, remains inseparable from the complex legacies of these individuals who, for a time, held the reins of power.